約1至2分鐘，俾多啲 guest 入埋嚟先，咁我哋就會正式開始今日呢一個 event 㗎啦。
Thank you everyone for being so on time for our event. We're just going to wait for a bit just so there's more people that can join, and then we're going to kickstart it really, really soon. If you have any questions, feel free to chat with us in the chat room right now. Hi, Renee.
Hi. Sorry I wasn't able to log on earlier, but I'm trying to find our background. Sorry, should I be introducing myself?
Oh, no. We're just going to wait for a bit and then we're going to kickstart this event. We're just waiting for a bit more people to join.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna, how do I flip this?
I think you're in the right position right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a minute. I will be right back.
No worries.
Thank you.
What time am I supposed to be speaking? And how do I share my slides? Sorry, those are my questions.
So
how do I share my slides? And yeah.
So when what you see at the bottom, you should be able to see a share button, and then you click on that.
Oh, no, I know how to share screen. I just want to make sure because I'm not the host.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you should have the permission to share slides as well.
Yeah, I can see. I have it. I just wanted to confirm that that's how you want to do it, because some conferences, they want to control the deck. It's easier for me if I can click my own slides.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. And sorry, it's been a very hectic day, so I apologize.
No worries.
Being a little late to the joining. Just mute myself for now.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. We're just officially going to start our CoCoon Smart Talk Reimagining Education. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm Hannah and this is Cherry.
大家好啊，咁我係 Cherry 啦，好歡迎大家參加今日 CoCoon Smart Talk 教育再想像。咁 Hannah， 不如你同我哋分享一下，其實 CoCoon Smart Talk 係啲咩嚟㗎？
Of course. Let me share with you a bit about CoCoon Smart Talk. We've designed this because in our vast community of 30,000 people, we believe there are millions of wisdom, insights, and valuable connections to be shared. Through CoCoon Smart Talk, we hope that we'll be able to begin conversations that matter and provide all of you a platform to keep learning on all that's happening in different industries and share your opinions as well.
咁我哋希望咧，透過 CoCoon Smart Talk 呢樣嘢，可以促進到我哋社群咧嘅3萬人裏面，可以分享知識同埋經驗，等各個行業嘅人咧都可以了解到唔同嘅行業最新嘅發展啦，展你嘅想像力，同埋創造一啲改變，幫助你建立你嘅新嘅人際網絡嘅。咁每個月咧，其實我哋都會邀請唔同行業嘅一啲專業人士去分享唔同嘅主題，希望咧可以幫助到咧我哋全部咧都可以獲到相關嘅專業知識嘅。
If you would like to know more about this community and join in, please feel free to private message us your email and we can add you into our monthly newsletter that will keep you updated on all the other resources and events that can benefit you.
如果咧你暫時未加入到 CoCoon 呢一個社群啦，咁或者咧你對於某一啲主題特別感興趣嘅話咧，歡迎你可以私信你嘅電郵地址俾我哋啦。咁等我哋咧可以將你加入我哋每月嘅通訊裏面，等你咧可以咧接收到相關嘅資源或者我哋其他活動嘅一啲宣傳詳情嘅。不如 Hannah， 你同我哋講下今日嘅 Smart Talk 教育再想像究竟又係講緊啲乜嘢啦？
Of course. So as times are changing faster and faster, I'm sure all of you are feeling the differences in how things are done and the challenges in adapting. Today, we've invited experts in the education industry to share what they believe the future of education would look like. Now, this is a very valuable time for all of us as they're all super busy people. So let's all take this opportunity to learn from them as much as possible. So after each keynote speaker finishes their sharing, there'll be a quick Q&A session right after. So please do write down any questions you may have by using the Q&A function below, even during their sharing, so that you can make the most of this valuable time. So please feel free to ask these questions in Chinese or in English.
咁近年嚟咧，我哋生活之中各個唔同嘅範疇咧，都出現咗好多轉變喎。咁我哋每日咧都喺學習緊點樣適應一啲新嘅生活模式啦。咁今次咧嘅 Smart Talk 咧，我哋就請嚟5位教育界具經驗嘅一啲講者咧，同我哋分享下喺唔同嘅角度探討究竟未來教育有啲乜嘢新嘅趨勢咧，以及科技咧係點樣咧令到我哋嘅一個教育嘅行業咧帶嚟一啲新嘅轉變。咁每位講者分享完之後咧，我哋將會進入一個好簡短嘅 Q&A 環節。如果咧你對分享嘅內容啦有任何問題嘅話，都可以即時撳下面 Q&A 嗰個環節嘅掣啦，或者咧你可以喺 chat room 裏面打低你嘅問題，咁我哋咧就可以咧即時完咗之後咧分享問翻我哋嘅講者啦。咁歡迎咧，你可以用中文或者英文咧提交你嘅問題嘅。
So without further ado, let me welcome our first keynote speaker. Ruby has extensive experience working with youth and university students. She's currently the assistant head in the Dean of Students Office in the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. At HKUST Career Center, she oversees graduate recruitment for more than 15,000 undergraduates and postgraduate students from all disciplines. In her previous roles at HKUST, she was involved with the MBA program and taught career-related courses to undergraduates and postgraduates from all disciplines. So let's welcome Ruby to share with us what is missing in our traditional education system.
好啦，事不宜遲，咁即刻將個時間交俾你啦 ，Ruby， 同大家分享下現時教育體制裏面缺少咗啲咩啦。
Okay, hello,各位. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you very much for having me here to talk to you today. So, as introduced, so I'm Ruby Lam. I'm from HKUST, and my role in the Career Center, I actually get to see the product of the Hong Kong education system, right? So if you look at the undergraduate population at UST, we have 80% of our students are local students, with only 20% from overseas, and so. In a way, after K to 12, I finally, like a factory, I'm the packaging department. I'm seeing the product. Now they're ready to get into the society. And there are some of the observations that I find, which I thought was quite interesting, that I think can shed some light on, what we did well or what's missing, right? And throughout all the years of education they've had. One of the things that I find, which is actually startling, is that most of the students, even by the time they graduate university, they have no idea what they want to do. And that's after they have, to go through all these career planning in high school. And I know in high school these days, they do all these like 生涯規劃 and all that stuff. And they even pick their majors, they wrote college admission essays. But by the time you graduate college, you ask them, what do you want to do? How much do you know about yourself? Like, what's your strengths and weaknesses? What your preferences? And most of the time, they cannot tell you. Having said that, if you look at their CVs, they have amazing CVs. They have done so much growing up. They're involved in all these clubs and taking a lot of classes, tons and tons of what we call enrichment activities that they have done throughout the entire education journey. And yet, after doing all that, you ask them, what do you want to, now what have you learned about yourself? What do you plan to do? They have no clue. And so we just find that quite startling. And that's not just, you might ask, oh, maybe it's just the students who are not so good at academics, right? Maybe your top students should know. Well, the reality is not quite. The top students are very good at finding the model answers, right? So they know what you want to hear, like, or what the right path is. But if you really talk to them, it's like really what you want. And they also don't know. So this is not something that is just for certain types of students, but it's actually for students who actually do well in school and also not so well in school. And there's also something, I think this is another thing that's quite unique to this generation is they're always on IG, they're always looking at their peers, they're always there. So I think in my days, we look at my peers are peers who like my classmates, right? People who go to the same school with me. So it's limited to like maybe 20, 30 people that I know, or maybe I might not even know the other students who go to another school in Kowloon. I might not know that person, like what they're doing. But now with IG and social media, everybody posting accomplishments online, right? And so they kind of, there's a feeling of inadequacy very, very easily among the young people. So it becomes, they kind of just felt like their comparison, like if you know, am I good in tennis? Well, guess what? They're going to find someone else on IG who is better than them and all right. So the whole idea of, you know, wow, how good am I? Am I smart enough? Am I good enough to for the real world? That there's a lot of sort of insecurity and helplessness that we see as well, and that's including, again, very top students. We find that as well. So often, you know, I ask myself, you know, how come, you know, they don't know what they want to do. And what we find is that they're going to tell us, you know what, nobody ever, growing up K to 12, nobody ever asked me what I want to do because my preference never mattered. They never needed to call shots. Pick subjects is usually, you know, they're given sort of recipes, right? You need to pick certain subjects to get to somewhere. You know, you want to be a doctor, you need to pick chemistry. For them, this is a recipe, and whatever they want to do never really mattered. So they never really asked themselves. And it's funny, like the first time is they come to see us, it's the first time someone ever asked them, what do they actually like to study? I thought that was quite interesting. They already finished college, right? So because growing up, they just never needed to call shots. And so that's what I find quite interesting. And they're very, very busy doing stuff. They do a lot of stuff. They do music, sports, and all that. But there's very little reflection on what they have done and then internalizing what they have done into who they are, right? So they do all these stuff and you ask them, like, what do you find that experience? What have you learned more about yourself after the experience? They don't usually think about that because they're way too busy just doing more and more and more, right? And then padding their CV. So we see that a lot. So thinking about, you know, how do we build in more reflection or ways for them to internalize what they have done into part of them, I think that's quite very important. The other thing that I find, it's you know, this is good and bad, right? The world changes really, really fast, right? And so we are in a world where we are running on a very fast clock speed. And so what happens is that, you know, things sort of becomes obsolete very easily. However, in education, a lot of things takes time. So an example would be, you know, everybody in the world is now talking STEM education and coding and all that, right? So like, we're even like saying like, okay, 3-year-old, you need to learn how to code because that is the future. And then everybody's talking about it. And a lot of it is very overwhelming, right? For the kids. And while we're talking about coding, some of these kids don't even know, they don't even know enough basic mathematics. And if they don't know basic enough mathematics, they can learn on the syntax how to code, but they don't know how to use the code to solve problems, right? Because they don't know enough mathematics. They just don't know enough computational thinking. But then because the whole world is talking about this like coding and STEM and all that, they were like, well, maybe this mathematics thing is already obsolete. Maybe I should not even do basic mathematics. So I just think that, you know, because the world changes so fast, but because education is something that takes a lot of time, so then it becomes more like the kids feel like they get pulled into very different directions. Like, okay, what should I do now? Like should I be doing STEM now, or should I be doing? And then very soon it becomes STEAM, and it become, you know, all these different new names that sort of pops up. And so sometimes I think for the kids, they kind of just need a little bit of space and you know, room to just kind of grow a little bit, right? So like, for example, is anybody learning piano anymore these days? Well, maybe something's already very obsolete, right? So that's what I see is sort of something that I think is very distracting sometimes to the students as well. So some of the things that I you know, if I look at the traditional education system right now, I would start couple of points that I think is worth noting. I think one thing is we tend to think that like, oh, you know, the way how I grew up, there's the traditional subjects, right? The history, the science, English, and the math. It seems that those are no longer relevant. But they're not, they're still very, very relevant. So I think it's just to give the students a reassurance, you know what, you still want to learn the language, you still want to learn the basics. That is still very important. And then all the other stuff, there's a lot of other stuff like the STEM, you know, there's debate and art and all that. You know what, it's quite funny, like in our days, there's a lot of things that are ECA, but over the years, all the ECA has become CA. They're no longer extra. They are becoming, everything is included in the curriculum. And sometimes actually it's better for extracurricular to stay extracurricular. And not everything has to be included into curriculum, because once it happens, it becomes recipe. So students go through it and they feel like I'm just doing it because I'm asked to do it. I have to. It's not because I want to or I choose to. And so therefore they would feel like they have this sense of sort of helplessness that they never needed to make decisions ever in their lives. The other thing that I find quite interesting is that, and I think over the years I've seen it, is right now what I'm observing is, and HKUST, it's a culprit as well. We are now having 50 years old running ECAs for the 15-year-old. So think about it, like in the past, right? A debate club are run by students, right? It's students running for students. Now there are organizations who run ECA for the students. So the students, instead of being a leader or like being part of it, they are actually just consumers. And you know, even self-initiated projects, you know, I've actually seen some tutoring schools or companies around that offering like project managers to help your students to run a self-initiated project. Kind of, that's an oxymoron. You hire somebody to help you run a self-initiated project. Something is wrong there. But it's exactly, I think we are sort of institutionalized a lot of these things, and we are helping them to do it. And I have to say, you know, our school, we have that problem too. It's because when we see the kids, when we see the students, oh, they're not doing this, let me plan it for them. I'm not ready to do it for them. And so what happens is they never needed to learn. And they never needed to decide that that's something, oh, you know, maybe I'll do it. And I think in the process, even if they fail, that's okay. Let them fail a little bit. Let them waste some time a little bit. It's okay. And I don't think we need to be, you know, constantly making sure, oh, they're doing it the most efficient way, they're getting the best ROI and all that. You know, it's okay to let them call some shots, give them some room and give them a bit more space and free time. That I actually find to be something that really, really missing. And so what's the role of the adults, right? So I actually find, you know, looking at my students, they really value having trusted relationships with mentors and adults in their lives. And that could be parents, it could be teachers, it could be, you know, like tutors or, you know, just extra, you know, basketball coaches. But it's somebody who sort of walk with them instead of like designing curriculum for them. And having those kind of people in their lives and helping them every step of the way, helping them reflect and internalize what they have done so that it becomes part of them. That is a lot of times, I think, you know, because the kids are so busy, they don't have time for all that stuff. And the parents are so busy. I myself, I also sign up my kids for a lot of classes. So I'm so busy signing them up for classes, I don't have time to do that. And so that's what I find, that's what they really need. And that's where I see the adults can play that role. And I think teachers can do that too in school, perhaps less so much on the curriculum, but more focus on the individual and the relationship with the individual. That's probably more important for them. Yeah, so the other thing, you know, because I'm in sort of career planning, and I just kind of felt, you know, all these like 生涯規劃, all these like planning we do in high school. The reality is the world changes so fast. Most of the time, the career counselors, they don't understand enough about how quickly the world changes these days. And so all those like if you apply the old paradigm into the way how they should plan their life, most of the time it doesn't work. So you know, I think it's understanding like they are going to be living in a very, very different world from the one that you and I grew up in. And so to appreciate that and then to kind of walk with them, I think that's probably more important. So that's all I have to share today. I don't know if you have any questions. I think I already ran out of time. So
thank you so much, Ruby. We always learn so much from your sharings. So right now we're going to move on to our Q&A session for Ruby. I see that there is one question from our audience. She said, sounds right, but how practical is it to implement it? Lack of direction applies to us all, not just children. Ruby, would you have any response to that?
Yeah, so I agree, right? But the world changes so fast, even the adults don't know what direction we should be heading. I agree with that completely. The issue is, I think with the children, we pack their schedules so much that they actually were never even given the room to sort of think and to make decisions. And so sometimes, you know, if you give them room, they might not find it. They might wasted it. But it's more like, but if you never give them the room, they would never have the chance to do it. So it's a you know, there's no guarantee. And if we want guarantee, there's just no guarantee. You just have to give them the room to space to explore, you know, to explore instead of kind of giving them the recipe. I think the part that, you know, because I'm in career I'm in career, and so the students would come to me and tell me, oh, my parents want me to do this because, you know, my parents said this worked for them, right? But what worked for them might not work for the students, right? So you know, so if we kind of just give them a little bit of room, I think we're going to be surprised at just how much we actually can learn from them as well. So, but yes, you're correct. They might not find it. They might still not find it. But at least in the process, they actually had made some decisions. They actually have the room to actually make some decisions for themselves. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have one more question. He asked, isn't there a fundamental disconnect because the schools measure success based on graduation rates, not on what students are able to do after graduations or how well they know themselves?
Yes. So what gets measured gets done, right? So we measure the graduation rate, we measure how much money they make. And so we use that as a benchmark, and then we try to train up people for that. So that is a problem. So the question is, though, are these people? So we are developing a system where we kind of push all these young people through, and so on the surface it would appear they kind of know what they're doing, but because we work with them very closely, what we find is that, you know, a lot of them don't. So what part of it, I think for our school, for example, one of the things we stop measuring is just exactly on graduation rates and just stop measuring on how much money they earn. We actually look at what fields they get into, the diversity of the fields they get into, or what kind of paths they take as another measure to look at sort of success, the way how we sort of, depending on how you just sort of defined it. But yes, so the measurement does, the way how you measure does create a different incentives as well for the students and the parents.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. First of all, just want to acknowledge everyone just chatting in the chat room. We love it. Thank you so much. Continue to chat. So one more question is, how do we formalize the act of giving room so it will take trends?
Sorry, how do we formalize? So
giving room.
So it would take trend.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. What I find is that if you look at some of our top students in my school, for example, a lot of them are able to take a lot of initiative and be very successful with it because they actually have time to do it. An example would be, for example, we actually have a lot of students who actually, so an example, yesterday I just saw one student. He does not have very good grades, but he tells me he's already earning $50,000 per month. Doing what? Oh, he's buying secondhand cell phones and selling them. Okay, I have no idea why he's doing that, but he's already doing that. And he said, oh, I actually started this IG shop, and he's been doing this as something that drives him. He likes that very much. And but as a result, he does not, his grade's not the best. He does not have a lot of internships, or he does not have a very stellar CV, but he's actually doing a lot of stuff on the side. So when I meet with a lot of students, I actually see those stories again and again. And I think that, in terms of taking trends, I think when if the adults see success examples, right, that are, even in our school, IMC, we are also trying to do that, is we try to feature or profile students perhaps taking the less traditional path as the way how we usually frame the paths, right? And then over time, I think when the students and the family see examples, that they would start to realize that perhaps, giving them opportunities to call shots, to make room for them. I think that's actually better for them. But then again, there's no guarantee, right? Not everybody you give them room to do something, they would actually create something. But at least, they need to have that chance if you actually want something great that comes out of it.
Thank you, Ruby. So thank you everyone for participating in the chat room and also asking your questions. If you have any further questions for Ruby, please continue to leave it in the Q&A section. Perhaps towards the end, we'll invite Ruby again to have more Q&A time. So now is our time for our next speaker, which is Renee. Renee, she's the founder and head of School of Bloom Academy. As a teacher, she has seen how the pressures of tests can be on students, and she really wants to help them stretch their creative muscles again, and she sees the stress of college admissions saps the pleasure of learning. So to address these concerns, Renee and her team have done extensive research, designed original curriculum, and pursued professional development to prepare young people to face these challenges with positivity, integrity, and creative confidence. Renee is excited to be harnessing her experience, skills, and passion to launch Bloom KKCA Academy, and it's her hope that this academy will offer young people an ideal environment to grow and a community of inspiration and innovation. Renee will be sharing with us, what does an ideal future school look like? So let's welcome Renee.
咁下一位講者咧，將會係 Renee Bowie，咁佢將會分享下未來理想嘅學校係點樣嘅咧。咁我哋而家即刻將時間交俾 Renee。
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Ruby. You set up what I have to share perfectly, and everything you said resonates with me. So as Hannah and Cherry have already introduced me, I don't want to get into my background, and I will dive instead directly into this topic. So I wanted to first take a step back and think about how the world is changing and how that relates to education. So as Klaus Schwab, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum, has reminded us, we are now in the fourth industrial revolution. And what that means is that we are now seeing the coming together of the cyber, the physical, and the biological. When a lot of us grew up, there was already automation and computers in our curriculum. But now we're talking about objects talking to each other, knowing ourselves, like machines understanding humans, maybe even better than we know ourselves. And also the ability to edit things that are biological or create things, bioengineering, obviously, and then nanotechnology, 3D printing, all of that stuff. And I just want to highlight three things that are unique to this fourth industrial revolution that affects how we should think about schooling. The first is the velocity of change. You mentioned, Ruby, I think, like how there are teachers who are maybe more senior, leading things for very young people. So if you think about how fast the world has changed in the past 1 year, and how all teachers have had to adapt to teaching online, you can begin to imagine how much schools really should be changing, how rapidly they should be changing in order to keep up. there's always this race between technology and education throughout history, from the invention of fire. When you have tools, education partly is about learning how to use those tools. How to not be mastered by them is a whole other question. But I think that race, I mean, education is really losing. Traditional education is really losing that race. And as a result, I think much of education that's been pioneering, innovative, have happened outside of schools. And then the second point is scope. The scale of this, the scope of this industrial revolution affects every single field. So it's not just, oh, people in tech are going to be influenced. No, whether you want to do law, traditional things like medicine, accounting, the most traditional things you can think of, like banking, which is considered, a very conservative profession. Now you have fintech just eating up banks for lunch, right? So you really have to think about how your own career will look like and how your schooling is preparing you for that. And then the third point is the way it is systemic. So it is actually not just about one or two, sorry, when I was talking about scope, I also wanted to mention it's global. And with systemic, it's influencing really the whole way business is conducted or operations are conducted in every field. And so the understanding of how things connect and are interlinked is actually a very important skill and mindset to teach our students. And I think that intuitively, as we age, we understand we're part of a system. But there is a whole new field called systems thinking, which I think should be taught in schools. And schools, we ourselves are part of a system. And I guess that's kind of what I want to share with you today, how I really believe that it's not about just technology like ed tech or one or two things that need to be tweaked in order to improve education, as we may have thought in the past, but something much more maybe seismic and systemic that needs to take place. If you think about hospitals, would you want to step into a hospital that has not been renovated in 20 years? Probably not. But many schools look the same as they did 20 years ago, and you wouldn't be shocked by that. Okay, so in terms of our relationship with technology, because I think that is driving a lot of the changes in future schools, and you talked about STEM, and I totally agree, that is not the heart of the matter. But one thing that is, I think, worth noting when it comes to STEM is that right now we're still in the stage where we're outsourcing a lot of our knowledge and trying to think about how technology can answer our questions. But I think we really have to think about how to cooperate, to co-develop and co-evolve with technology, and how technology can augment our knowledge. So when you think about, oh, what do future schools, what might they look like? Often these images come to mind. Sustainability, a lot of greenery, very organic, and a lot of glass and futuristic looking. Or the other image that comes to mind is everybody in their own bubble, right? VR goggles and AR. And then, of course, already emerging are innovative schools across the planet. We have Steve Jobs schools popping up in the Netherlands, inspired by Jobs' philosophy towards innovation and disruption. And then also Elon Musk starting Astronova, and if you haven't checked it out, Synthesis, which is the online branch of his school. So sitting from Hong Kong, your home in Hong Kong, you can tap into some of what he's doing in his school. And I also present to you this picture, which is from our pilot school. We're launching our school this year. Bloom Academy is opening in September, but we've been running a pilot program for the past 2 years. This is what our future school looks like, a very old school form of transportation, because this is a field trip. Our school has weekly field trips. Why does a school need to be limited to the four walls of its campus? I really believe that future schools should be bringing down these walls. And so our kids go out. In this case, they were going to the Bank of China to explore why there were wild boars in the fountains. And they actually went to Hong Kong Botanical Gardens to investigate and interview people, found out that it came from the peak, went up to the peak the next week. So every single week, our kids are going out to museums, out to parks, out to streets. I think a future school should look like that too. And I think the main point is that it is not what it looks like on the outside that matters. It's what's on the inside. It's the software that really matters when it comes to thinking about future schools. So I would like to present to you 3 key features that in my journey of building this school, I've come to realize are central. I've visited over 30 schools around the world, mainly in the US, but around the world. I've researched schools beyond those 30 as well. And I think these are common features. The first is an emphasis on well-being, in particular, social emotional well-being. The second is personalization to a much greater degree than in the past, where basically, Ken Robinson talks about how students are treated like products in a factory, and you're sorted by your date of manufacture. No longer the case. You will each have very unique career paths that will also, involve a lot of change. And so schools have to tap into how each person learns differently, has different interests to engage them. Otherwise, we will lose the students and schools will become very irrelevant. And the third point is we need to be much more innovation focused. Sorry for speaking so fast, but I'm going to try to present these ideas to you through my journey to 3 school visits. The first is the Nueva School, which is the top gifted school in the US, one of the very best and been around for longest. This is their elementary school. So look at it, old school. It actually was a converted house, not futuristic at all, ancient columns there. But what matters is, again, on the inside. So they're a school with a lot of gifted kids. And I use that as an example because it's like, okay, even when you solve all the academic problems and learning, they're 4-year-olds who sprout poetry. They do astrophysics when they're like in grade 7. So you've got some brilliant kids there. But really, the school still has a very important role to play in their lives. And that has to do with their social emotional learning and learning together, right? How do you learn together? COVID has taught us it is not enough to be online, watching videos and submitting your homework. That's fine. And is very useful and we're grateful for that, but that is not school. And so you can see from this diagram, one of the models of social emotional learning used in many schools. My own school uses the Institute of Positive Education's model based in Geelong Grammar School, but this is a wonderful one. Many of them share similarities. So you can see self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making. Ruby talked about how they don't get to make decisions. So giving them these opportunities, I'll talk about how that can be done in schools later, but social awareness and relationship skills. So that has to be done in the classroom, in schools, and at home as well, reinforced. What I was taking a picture of was how each kid gets to express their individuality. These are their cubbies, and also how they're feeling and who they are. That's what makes people unique. In their high school, this is their high school, I was visiting, they do a lot of project-based learning, and they bring in industry experts. And that dialogue between these experts, this is a designer who's working with the students, that engages the students and helps develop their social skills as well. They teach design thinking, of course, which is something CoCoon STEP does beautifully and is bringing to like over 40 schools. Super proud of what they're doing in Hong Kong. So design thinking is not something that can only be taught at very STEM-oriented schools. Any school can teach it. I want to highlight they have a course, a requirement for graduation called Science of Mind. One of the great frontiers of our generation is the mind, our brain, and what is inside there. Learning how to understand that from a psychological perspective, from a biological neuroscientific perspective, all of that is what schools need to do, because we can't be there for the kids forever. So we need to help them understand how they learn, how their mind works. And this is some details about that program. Every single year in high school, they have to learn it. They take from different practices in different fields. And just to, evaluate like role of technology in their lives. And I'll share this quote with you by one of their graduates, right? I can't see the whole quote. When I was a student at the Nueva Middle School, our SEL classes centered around practicing healthy communication. We learned and practiced the difference between passive, aggressive, and assertive language, and dissected what makes a good conversation. These were some of the most useful lessons of my life. She became a teacher later on. And I think I just want to bring that out because we think innovative future schools, technology, robots. No, people talking to people matters just as much. Okay, next school, Khan Lab School. Just now, Ruby talked about individuals making decisions. So this is a school that takes personalized learning to the extreme. You've heard of Khan Lab School, Khan Academy, of course, but Khan Lab School is the bricks and mortar version. So Sal Khan has Khan Academy on the top floor, and on the bottom floor is the school. This is what it looks like. And one of our school advisors is actually was actually one of their founding team members who became the head of their lower school. And she described something to me that I want to share with you, which is the system of independence levels. So not only are you in a grade level, and maybe with math and language, you have different levels, they have a rubric for independence. So how ready are you to learn independently? And how do you move up? You actually go to your homeroom teacher or your mentor and you talk to them and you negotiate and explain why you think you're ready to move up. They will then give you a challenge. And the next 2 weeks, you get to prove whether you can achieve it. So within the same level of math, you have a student where after the class, the teacher says, okay, you guys can work on your own. One kid might be doing homework in a very traditional way. The teacher says you have to finish all of these 20 problems. Another child might get to choose and maybe do a gamified version. Another child might be doing an independent research extension project. And who gets to do what? It's based on your independence level. Okay, so I just want to show you some of the physical setup. You can see these small group learning, independent, kids are doing different things, but community also matters. Oh, sorry, kind of low quality image there. But just to say that they also care about coming together, mixed age learning. That's another feature that accompanies this. It's very weird because you think personalized sounds very cellular, individual, but actually in many schools that emphasize personalized learning, there's a lot of mixed age learning, because people are moving at their own pace. And there's no reason why people should be marching along exactly the same rhythm when they get to set their own pace, right? If you think about sports, music, it's so obvious. But somehow when it comes to math or Chinese or history, we think, no, everybody should know the same thing at the same age. Just kind of ignoring the realities of brain development. And then actually, I added the slide as Ruby, you were talking, because in the Q&A section, someone asked, like, you were talking about what gets measured and, how do you get around the issue of tests and report cards. So what they use is Mastery Transcript. This is a consortium of schools that have agreed to use this new way of reporting and assessing kids and demonstrating progress. Sorry again for this low quality image. I had to do it while you were doing the Q&A, but go Google Mastery Transcript Consortium if you want to know more. It is not about the numbers, but about like a holistic, more narrative way of describing progress. And it also is based on a concept key to Khan Academy, which is mastery-based learning, which is why when you're learning online, you can all go at your own pace. And it's about mastering the content, not making sure you're keeping up with the person next to you. So just want to mention that in response to someone who was asking about report cards. There are solutions. It's whether schools are kind of brave enough, bold enough to embrace it. Okay, third and last school, High Tech High. It is not just a high school, it is now a network of 16 schools, but it is the most established set of schools doing project-based learning in America, which is the last feature of being innovation focused. And project-based learning is only one way that you can be future focused, innovation ready, but I think it is a really critical way. Oopsie, sorry, set a timer for myself. So it comes from this approach, which is called constructivism, where you build your understanding rather than receive it passively. And so learning by doing is at the heart of project-based learning. And you can see, I don't want to get into the details of it, but just to say, it often begins with a driving question or a challenge. So in our school, we use a lot of mission-based learning, and you can earn points for it and move up the ladder. Why is it important? Because when you give people the opportunity to ask questions, the answer matters to them much more. And they also learn to solve problems in a way that is much more proactive. It's not a question that is on the exam and that's why you're studying for it, because this random individual you've been assigned as your teacher has decided it will be on the exam, but because you are curious about this. And of course, if you combine it with things like field trips, where our kids went to the Maritime Museum, they were asking about why different boats were shaped different way. They came back, they designed different boats themselves. Each pair of students did a different type of boat, and they had to justify their design. Then it becomes much more personal, and deeper learning happens. And you also have the student voice, and they get feedback as they prototype and refine. And then the final stage of PBL is publicly presenting your product. So in a high-tech high school, this is just to show you that even their maps are made by students. You see a QR code that they designed, their own QR system, and everywhere you go, you can scan it and hear about the student work displayed. And you can see it on your phone, you can read the captions. All of this is stuff made by students. I love this one in particular. It's empathy, and it says that there is empathy in math, and it's about data science. But it's so great because you can be a grade 6 kid looking at a grade 9 student's work and learn from each other. This is what the classroom looks like, right? It's a hub of activity. They all look like some type of workshop or art room. And you can kind of see on the whiteboard, there's a project management board there. So it's like school should look more like work. I guess that's what I learned from looking at High Tech High. They did this project where, in teams of 4, you go to another planet. You have a life scientist, you have an architect, you have a historian. So how do you create a new civilization? And then you have to write about it based on your own role. And look at these little kids, they're presenting. One class is presenting to another. So again, with the social learning. And my tour guides, I love this about the school. They were 3 kids who were at grade 3, 4, and 5. The best tour guides I've ever had in a school. They could explain everything, like why the classroom was designed the way it was, why their schedule was the way it was, why they're sharing their own projects. So I think that's what a great school should look like. It should be the students driving a lot of the learning and feeling like it's their school. So going back to the original question, what does an ideal future school look like? I would like to share my version of this, my answer to this for Hong Kong. Our school is called a 百惠百位九江書院, and traditional learning, as Ruby said, still matters. So books still matter. We're not going to have kids holding iPads all day. Even though they do that at Khan a lot, we also, and I think they also, value books very much. Maker spaces, that is a key feature of many of these schools. Learning to use real world tools. Digital fabrication is one thing, but there's still a lot of, like, you see saws, you actually see laser cutters, all of that. So giving kids a proper space, workbenches to work together and make things. And then again, similar to Khan Lab, you see these kidney-shaped tables that allow for small group learning, flexible grouping. So what that means is basically kids in different levels working at on different aspects of the topic. Physical development. So 3 features that we take from what I was talking about applied to our school. We have daily campfires where we have a curriculum of positive education every single day in both English and in Chinese. We alternate. It's embedded into everything. So even when we learn about science, we discuss ethics a lot, because I think that's a whole other topic, but the context of technological development is just as important as the technology itself. So asking kids to think about, like, when an autonomous vehicle needs to make a decision, how do you program for that fairly? And then another idea, which is about personalization, how do you move as fast as we can, but as slow as we must? So again, with the flexible grouping, but also having a low student-teacher ratio, having a lot of assessments instead of exams, because assessments can be much more personalized. Having people who are aware of research so that they're teaching things that are age appropriate. There's no point to rush and kind of, what do I want to say? Kind of memorize in an artificial way a lot of knowledge that you just regurgitate, and then a year or maybe a month later you forget. That's not real learning. So I think sometimes we need to recognize the importance of patience. As Ruby said, like, it's about the long view with education. It is not about whether you've memorized what you were supposed to in grade 5, but really the deeper engagement. And a quick glimpse of our secondary school, which we've already been running a pilot program for 3 years. We have these interdisciplinary spaces, including, for example, the Science Guild that has a biotech science lab as the facility, and it's cross-disciplinary, chemistry, biology. We have vertical farming, and the questions that drive it, like project-based learning, how do we achieve climate security is one of the key questions. And so through things like hydroponics, through planning our school lunch menu, our students are actively engaged in answering these questions. And I know we have a lot of teachers here, so you may be thinking about the practicalities. These are ways in which I think future schools need to change. Calendars need to be modular so that you have courses that are interchangeable. So when you have experts who can come in, they can plug in and you can move a class. Timetabling, we need to think about time for collaboration outside of traditional learning, how we can create some teacher-led and some student-led courses. Subjects need to traverse subject boundaries. We all know that, but how do you actually execute that? And then teachers really have to be greater as generalists in the secondary school. Primary school teachers are generally generalists and they probably need more specialists, but secondary school, more generalists and people who have industry experience. So that concludes my sharing. And I think I just want to share this quote because John Dewey is a huge inspiration to me in building this school. And one thing he said is that the most important attitude that can be formed is that of the desire to go on learning. And I think that if the people who are designing a school, who are teaching, always remember that the schools of the future will keep responding to the realities they need to, and they should not be static. They should look different in different parts of the world. And it's the spirit of learning that really matters in the design of schools. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Renee. Super appreciate your sharing. Again, we always learn from each one of you, and we're so happy that you decided to put your gifts, your efforts, your intelligence into making this school. It's really inspiring. So we got a question from our audience member. She asked, how do you populate the idea of custom pacing to those who are less privileged to information and resources? Anything scalable planned from your team?
Yes, so I think that in fact, online learning is one of the best tools, especially for under-resourced schools and under-resourced communities, because I think one of the most expensive things about building a school or running a school is actually manpower. So teachers are what is expensive. Technology is often not the most expensive part, depending on what you're talking about. And of course, technology makes things scalable. So I think that the way in which teachers can, so if you have a fantastic teacher, how can you use technology to bring that teacher to many, many different classrooms? That's one way that that can be resolved. And I think that we have a lot to learn from video games in terms of self-pacing. These billion-dollar companies are more invested than most school districts and governments that I know of in terms of knowing how to incentivize you to be addicted to their games. So how do we leverage this dopamine release mechanism to the classroom? And I think that if there can be games that actually are easy, like, okay, you still have to get them the computers and the Wi-Fi. I think that is about hardware and infrastructure, which is a government kind of above my pay grade, but definitely something that every country should be thinking about. That I think is one solution. And so for our school, we're trying to design things that are shareable. Like, so for example, if we design these missions, how do we share them with other schools that might want to explore the same topic? That design takes a lot of thinking. So in terms of that software design, we can contribute, but of course the hardware requires some, collaboration or maybe philanthropy to enable students to have access to the hardware.
Before that, I'd love to tell you guys a bit about our program for a bit. Okay, so speaking of innovation and creativity, the CoCoon Foundation witnessed a lot of innovative ideas that blossomed over 11,000 students in Hong Kong. We're now raising a donation of Hong Kong dollars of 40,000 as seed funding for winners at the Hong Kong Entrepreneur Pitch to kickstart their business ideas. So if any of you would like to learn more about the CoCoon Foundation and support our student idea incubation program, feel free to scan the QR code that you see right now and learn more about Hong Kong Entrepreneur Pitch and donation methods.
咁啱啱咧，好 Randy 都有提到創意同埋創新呢樣嘢咧，點樣影響住我哋嘅年青人啦。咁好觀卓基金咧，其實見證超過11000名嘅同學咧，發展佢哋自己嘅創新意念，為身邊嘅問題咧設計一啲好創新嘅解決方案嘅。咁我哋今年咧，其實有為到創新意念嘅學生咧團隊舉行香港青年創新擂台，咁並且咧會希望咧為兩隊勝出嘅團隊咧籌集合共港幣4萬蚊嘅種子資金，幫佢哋嚟開展佢哋自己嘅意念嘅。咁如果咧你想了解更加多關於好觀卓基金嘅工作啦，或者咧幫助學生孵化佢哋自己嘅 idea 嘅話咧，你可以 scan 呢個 QR code 了解更多嘅。
So moving on, our next speaker is Michael J. Crawford. Michael is the co-founder of EdSpace, and he's a relentless learner with 13 years of experience in academia, nonprofits, and startups. Michael is constantly working to help others live their best lives. He's been an invited mentor, coach, presenter, and facilitator for workshops related to youth development, entrepreneurship, and education throughout the United States. And he's been an invited guest on wide-ranging podcasts and panels about technology, education, and the future of learning. As Michael is based in the States right now, he won't be able to join us live, but he's taken the time to record his sharing with us. So Michael will be sharing with us how is online learning disrupting the education industry.
咁跟住落嚟咧，我哋請到喺美國嘅 Michael 咧，分享究竟線上學習點樣革新教育呢個行業。咁因為時差嘅關係啦，所以咧我哋是次嘅分享咧將會以影片嘅方式進行。咁而家咧請大家細心欣賞。
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Michael Crawford and I work in education. I've been a researcher, a lecturer. I've worked in philanthropy and program management and product development. I've co-founded an edtech startup, and I'm currently advising for an international nonprofit focused on climate action education. So it is an honor to get the chance to speak with you. Thank you to Cherry and the CoCoon Foundation for inviting me. So today I want to talk about education, which is the mechanism for helping young people develop into productive, capable, thriving adults. And so for many of today's learners, both children and adults, online learning isn't just possible, it's primary. Online learning is here and it's here to stay. And if one person isn't doing all of their formal learning online, they probably know somebody who is. And so for many learners in 2021, the internet plays some kind of role. So what is online learning? Let's define it. For me, I define online learning as learning that is derived, at least in some part, through engagement with something on or from the internet. This could be a synchronous online course, or a YouTube video, or a webinar, a Twitter chat, a report that you stumbled across on Instagram, a Zoom video call with a colleague, and so much more. And all of these examples and countless others are learning opportunities that are necessarily influenced by the fact that they're on or from the internet. That is, because they're on or from the internet, they've been shaped by the internet in some way, either in how they formed or who formed them, or how they were accessed or where they were accessed, etc. So the benefits to online learning are seemingly endless, and I want to focus on a few of these benefits that I think will be especially relevant and valuable for this audience. So first, online learning grants learners access to different and diverse people. People from different countries, networks, industries. As an online learner, you have the ability to come into contact with and connect with people who, without the internet, may not ever have collided with you. But today, the internet makes it possible to share with and learn with so many incredible people. Second, online learning makes it possible to access an incredible range of different and diverse learning offerings. webinars, mastermind learning groups, courses, talks, like this one, conferences, projects. Many of these are available online, but accessing them offline requires you to be in physical proximity to the places and people who are part of them. So with online learning, again, all you need is the technology to be able to access these opportunities. Third, online learning enables the learner to self-pace and self-direct their learning based on their interests, goals, and needs. So a learner can get immersed in a topic, they can dabble, they can leave and revisit, they can change directions altogether. Because online learning often disconnects the learning from the synchronous time requirement, learners are able to better harmonize their learning with the rest of their life, be it work, family, or anything else. Online learning comes with a number of challenges, two of which I'd like to touch on here. So first, many of the existing platforms and technologies are built to solve teachers' and administrators' problems, rather than being built to enable the flourishing of the learner. These platforms lack the learner user experience that keeps learners engaged and wanting more. Instead, learners do what they're required to do for the grade or the course, but that's it. These platforms make managing learners more efficient for teachers and administrators, but they aren't actually built for learners to thrive. Second, too many teachers and administrators are failing to embrace online learning's potential as a unique opportunity for learning, which is different from offline learning. Platforms can and do shape pedagogy, but only if the teachers and administrators of more formal learning experiences embrace it. If an online learning experience is structured as an offline experience that happens to be online, that's very different from an online learning experience that leverages the benefits I mentioned earlier. Online learning is different from offline learning, or at least it can be, but too few teachers and administrators have the expertise, the knowledge, the training, or powerful online learning experiences themselves to bring online learning to life for learners. So like most things in education, or like most things where humans are involved, the effect of online learning on the education industry depends. The internet has already had an impact on the education industry. The internet has already uprooted it. Even during a pandemic, U.S. edtech startups raised $2.2 billion across 130 deals, which is more money across more deals than ever before. And though some of these may not be explicitly or directly online learning per se, it's safe to assume that the overwhelming majority of them are connected to online learning in some capacity. More money in edtech means more choices in education. On the flip side, education as an entity has tremendous inertia and is not easily disrupted. Year after year, increasing investments in edtech, growing numbers of books and reports and articles with innovative ideas, more conferences, more experts, more product ambassadors, more people with more opinions, and higher stakes for everyone involved. And yet, education has remained foundationally the same, which is to say, formal schooling for young people with a physical building, groups based on age, identified subjects, standardized assessments and benchmarks, annual progress, etc. Even in a pandemic, a surprising number of people are clamoring for a return to offline, in-person schooling experiences for young people. Now flipping back the other way, the niche of the education industry focused on virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, and immersive experiences is in its infancy. There is tremendous potential in these technologies to extend learner access to simulated places and experiences, and the potential transformative capacity is hard to calculate. So I'll end with this. Online learning is more than we can imagine, and only a slice of the story. All of us need to continue learning in a range of ways, offline and online. The future of online learning, the education industry, education itself, our world, that future is up to us. So let's keep learning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing. So we're ready to invite our next speaker, which will be our final speaker for today, be Woody. He is the co-founder of Beginneros. Beginneros is an online learning platform dedicated to sharing knowledge and regularly upload high-quality teaching clips, allowing all of us to become experts. They believe that everyone should have equal learning opportunities and inherit the wisdom of predecessors and promote the future development of society. Woody will be sharing with us about how how can online learning be elevated and engaging? Please welcome Woody.
Beginners 係一個網上面嘅學習平台，致力宣揚知識共享呢一個概念。咁定期咧都會分享一啲高質素嘅教學片段，等佢哋咧都可以從初學者咧成為專家嘅。咁佢哋相信咧每個人都應該享有平等嘅學習機會，承繼咧一啲前人嘅智慧，推動社會未來嘅發展。咁今日咧嘅代表 Beginners 嘅代表 Woody 咧，亦都係我哋最後一位講者啦，就將會分享點樣咧提升線上學習嘅體驗嘅。咁我哋而家即刻將時間交俾 Woody 先。
好，唔該晒。咁我而家 share 翻個 screen 先，睇到嘛？睇到好。咁我而家用翻中文台啦，因為我做呢個 preparation 嘅時候，其實都係用一個中文嘅形式去準備嘅，咁所以我今日嘅 sharing 都會用中文為主嘅。咁開始之前就頭先多謝兩位咁精彩嘅介紹一下 beginner 係咩啦。咁其實我都想講一講，其實點解今次 CoCoon 揾呢個 topic 嘅時候會揾咗 beginner 嚟做嘅咧？因為我哋都可能想即係俾大家了解多啲，就係原來 beginner 係做緊呢啲嘢，所以可以講到俾大家知點樣去提升呢個線上學習嘅體驗嘅。咁所以開始之前咧，我會做多少少介紹翻 beginner 嘅嘢先嘅。係啦，咁其實beginner 做緊好多唔同嘅嘢啦，好多人認識我哋 social media around 有20萬個 followers 喺 Instagram 啊，5萬個喺 YouTube 啊，幾萬個喺 Facebook 等等啦。咁好多人認識我哋嘅時候咧，其實佢哋都係諗，你呢個 platform 其實平時 share 好多有趣嘅知識喎，佢哋會用呢一個方法或者呢個渠道去了解咗我哋先嘅。但係其實咧 beginner 係 more than that 嘅。我哋除咗平時會 share 好多唔同嘅冷知識，即係講下點解大白象會叫大白象啦？原來就係因為以前泰國有個皇帝養緊一隻象嘅時候，使咗好多錢落去，咁所以令到民不聊生嘅，咁所以就有咗大白象呢個 term。我哋除咗其實分享呢啲有趣嘅冷知識去 grab 啲人嘅 attention， 去希望佢哋留意住我哋嘅資訊之外咧，其實我哋平時都會拍好多唔同嘅教學短片啊，或者甚至乎其實我哋亦都有50-60個其實平時會定期幫我哋寫開唔同 topic 文章嘅一啲導師咧，其實會分享佢哋嘅知識俾我哋嘅。其實我哋就希望可以打造一個 ecosystem， 就係希望啲人學嘢嘅時候就會諗起我哋嘅時候，或者係佢亦都可以學到一啲佢想學嘅嘢，提升到佢哋嘅技巧嘅。咁所以 beginners 其實都係基於呢一個 background 去成立嘅。咁同埋我哋其實成日 emphasize 一樣嘢就係其實線上學習同線下嘅學習咧，我哋覺得係不能分割嘅。即係好多人會諗，喂，有咗 online learning 之後，其實咪唔使 offline learning， 或者係 offline learning 其實變得冇咁重要咧？其實我哋覺得唔係嘅。我哋成天文都認為係 online learning 其實係同 offline learning 咧係一個互相補足嘅一個地方嚟嘅。即係你可能學完一啲嘢，你上網你 offline 學完之後，其實你上網去做一個 revision， 或者係你上網自己睇完一啲片之後 offline 問翻老師，同佢 face to face 去有啲 interaction， 咁樣做咧，你個學習先會較為完整嘅。咁所以我哋喺我哋呢個背景之下咧，就形成咗我哋 beginners 嘅存在啦。咁同埋有一樣嘢好得意，頭先啲咁多位講者其實佢都有提及嘅，就係點解其實學習好多時候啲小朋友，而家香港嘅小朋友啦，好多時候就好細個就俾人逼咗去學好多唔同嘅 which is 可能佢哋都唔知係咩嚟嘅，揼曲嗰啲佢哋唔知咩嚟嘅。咁 which is beginners 其實都係因為呢個 background 而成立，就係我哋覺得好多人一啲基本上生活上面嘅技巧，佢哋自己都唔知係應該要點做嘅，甚至乎可能即係點樣剝橙啊，點樣揀水果啊，呢啲生活嘅技巧其實佢哋都唔知點樣去做嘅時候，我哋就做咗好多唔同類型嘅網上教學片，希望佢哋除咗喺日常即係除咗喺佢哋學術上邊學嗰啲資訊之外，其實喺佢哋日常生活入面一啲技巧都可以透過我哋嘅一啲影片或者同我哋嘅一啲 interaction， 我哋嘅資訊入面學翻嘅。咁所以 that's why 就係呢個 beginner 成個組織或者成間網上學習平台係做緊啲咩咧？就係做緊呢一啲嘢啦。咁所以我哋不斷就要喺網上邊去諗一啲好多唔同嘅資訊，去同我哋嘅 audience 去做一啲 interaction。咁所以我諗喺呢一方面，我哋都可以分享到少少資訊，回應翻個 topic， 就係點樣提升到網上學習嘅嗰個興趣嘅，即係嗰個體驗係點嘅。咁開始之前再分享多少少 fun facts 咧，就係其實網上學習呢一樣嘢咧，其實好早喺10幾20年前其實已經 存在咗喺呢個地球之上㗎啦。咁只不過係可能近年因為COVID-19 啦、pandemic 嘅影響啦，令到呢一樣嘢更加加速咗喺呢個社會上面成長。最高峰期嘅時候睇過聯合國嘅一個數字咧，就係有14.5億嘅學生咧係受到呢個 pandemic 嘅影響，促使咗呢個 e-learning 喺唔同嘅國家同埋唔同嘅地方嘅一個快速嘅推進嘅。OK， 咁喺正係因為呢個氛圍之下，我哋其實網上學習同線上學習就開始出現咗一個交叉點喺度啦，就係好多時候大家就要由一個線下學習過渡過去網上學習嘅呢個地方。咁喺以前嘅offline 嘅 learning 下面咧，其實有啲研究咧就分享過，原來你喺一個線下嘅課堂咧，個學生好專心咁上堂，上完你個課堂之後咧，其實佢就會有8至10% 嘅資訊流傳率喺佢個腦袋入面啦。即係其實佢坐定定聽完你講一啲嘢之後咧，其實佢有10% 嘅資訊咧，佢係會記得到嘅。但係如果你搬到過去線上學習嘅時候咧，反而佢有20至60% 嘅資訊咧係會留到喺佢個腦袋入面喎。呢個可能喺大家對於 online learning 或者 e-learning 嘅時候會發覺，咦，點解好似同我嘅了解有少少唔同？因為通常同親任何教育工作者或者其他人去講話網上教育嘅時候，其實好多時候佢哋都會覺得，喂，啲學生學唔學到嘢㗎？咁引申呢個問題嘅。但係 scientific proof 去話翻俾大家知，如果大家喺同等嘅機會情況下去學習一樣嘢嘅話 ，online 同 offline 嘅話咧，佢哋可以吸收多啲同耐啲嘅。最主要嘅原因係因為佢哋可以 learn at their own pace 啦，佢哋隨時隨地可以自己學到啦，甚至乎佢哋唔識睇嘅時候可以翻睇啦。咁但係我哋要 achieve 到呢25至60% 嘅資訊流傳率之前咧，我哋有一個好嚴重嘅問題需要面對嘅，就係 online learning 咧，其實佢哋嘅棄課率或者完課率，即係佢哋完成嗰個課堂嘅機會咧係好少嘅，即係你可能100個學生，只不過有5% 嘅學生咧，佢哋係會完成到佢哋個課堂嘅啫。佢哋有70% 嘅學生都有一個棄課嘅存在嘅，即係可能佢 register 咗嗰個 course， 但係最後真正上睇晒成個課程嘅話咧 ，even 佢俾完錢又好，免費又好咧，都係得5% 嘅完課率會發生嘅啫。咁所以 online learning 最大個問題咧就不在於學生吸唔吸收到嗰樣嘢，反而係嗰個學生有冇一個堅持性喺度。咁正就我哋要解決嗰個網上體驗嘅問題嘅時候，我哋首先要揾出咗佢哋最大嗰個問題係喺邊度先。咁其實我哋好簡單咁可以概括咗佢哋兩大嘅挑戰係喺呢兩個 pain point 度嘅。就係傳統嘅學習，我哋個自由度會比較低啦，因為我哋可能會喺線下嘅課程，我哋會坐喺個課室入面，會聽好多唔同嘅嘢。even 佢冇興趣都好，但係因為佢 physically 喺嗰個地方咧，佢點都會吸收到少少嘢嘅。咁但係去到 online learning 嘅時候，佢真係可以隨時隨地學啦。even 甚至乎你係大學嗰啲Zoom 啊，中學嗰啲 Zoom，佢喺度播俾你睇嘅時候，其實你 guarantee 唔到個學生真係好 focus 咁樣聽到嘅，可能開咗個 cam 喺度，好似瞄咗自己把聲，佢做緊啲咩大家唔知，咁可能最後佢學嘅嘢就會相對地較少啦。咁喺 online learning 上面，我哋好難去控制到個學生嘅自律性嘅嗰一點嘅。咁呢個係其中一個最大嘅 pain point 啦。第二樣嘢咧就係喺 online learning 咧，同傳統嘅線下學習咧，佢最大嘅分別就係在於喺線下學習，無論點都好，我哋因為親身見到個老師，就同佢做一啲 face to face 嘅 interaction。even 可能係佢教完一啲嘢，你冇咩興趣，但係佢都可能因為課堂上面你見到佢會捉住你問你一啲問題嚟學一啲嘢。但係喺 online learning，even 我而家係讀緊 master 嘅時候，其實都有啲professor 成日會問問題啦。even 佢可能開咪問問題，舉手問問題，去俾幾分鐘大家時間答問題都好啦。佢問完之後咧，其實冇人去覆佢，因為佢唔會好似 face to face 咁 delegate 去見住嗰個人。even 佢可能見住嗰個人個名，讀佢嗰個名話，可能 Woody 你會唔會幫我答問題啊？可能 Woody 其實唔喺個位度答唔到佢問題嘅。咁所以變相喺呢個 interaction 上邊冇咗一個 experience 嘅 learning 俾佢，冇嗰個 conversation 嘅存在，就令到線上學習就有呢個咁大嘅挑戰啦。咁所以喺自律性同埋喺呢個溝通上邊形成咗我哋網上學習最大嘅挑戰。咁要解決呢個問題咧，其實坊間已經有好多唔同嘅 solution 係發生緊嘅。其實即係因為正如我頭先所講啦，網上學習其實 exist 咗10至20年嘅存在，已經好耐嘅嘢啦。咁外國搞得大嘅網上學習平台啊，可能 Coursera 玩
Recording in
其實
progress.
你就已經代入咗一個環境入面，去成為一個主角，去一關一關咁過去培育你嗰個健身嘅目標啦。其實坊間已經有好多唔同類型嘅 tool 俾我哋㗎啦 ，even 可能甚至乎即係有一個設定一個目標，可能每個禮拜你要投放幾多時間，你就可以跟進到進度，咁樣去俾大家。呢啲 tool 其實好多嘅，咁但係我哋喺解決我哋網上學習體驗嘅時候，其實好多時候或者甚至乎解決任何問題嘅時候咧，科技只不過係一個引子或者一個 solution 去幫我哋做一樣嘢，但係真正要幫我哋去解決嗰樣問題嘅話咧，其實係在乎於我哋個心，即係可能好老土啦，即係無啦啦做乜講心啊咁嘅嘢啦。咁但係其實講心嘅嗰樣嘢係咩咧？其實呢個心咧，其實唔係淨係話學生佢哋個心係要點，老師個心係點。其實呢個係一個雙方嘅心嘅，即係點解咧？因為其實學習喺由以前喺人類嘅穴居時期，佢哋學習點樣生火去捕捉動物，去到文藝復興時期學一啲宗教嘅嘢，甚至乎去到而家學一啲 technical 嘅電腦 coding 嘅技能啦。咁但係其實不斷學習嘅時候，我哋都喺度演化緊嘅。咁但係我哋喺呢個演化嘅過程入邊，我哋自己嘅心態有冇隨住呢一樣嘢演化咧？即係好啦，原來以前我哋喺課室上面傳統學習嘅時候，我哋係用緊嗰套 materials 嘅，但係搬到上去線上學習，我哋作為一個教育工作者，我哋有冇諗一諗，設身處地去個學生個角度去諗一諗，我哋而家用緊呢套 tool 其實啱唔啱佢用咧？即係我以前喺課室度排咗堂劏牛眼，我直接就可以同啲學生做一個 interaction。但係而家呢一樣嘢，你做 online 嘅時候，你點樣做咧？你點樣去解決翻呢個問題？學生唔通睇住你條片，去睇住你劏牛眼，佢可以俾你，佢會更加有興趣咩？唔係嘅喎，因為可能佢本身喺 YouTube 或者其他地方，佢哋已經睇到一啲類似嘅嘢喎。咁我哋作為一個教育工作者，我哋有冇喺呢方面喺做一個 online learning 嘅時候 ，online education 嘅時候，我哋 upgrade 我哋自己嘅配套，用我哋嘅心去設身處地去為學生諗一諗咧。好啦，調翻轉睇個學生嘅角度嘅時候，喺學生自己本身心目中，你自己學呢一樣嘢，當初你報呢一個課程嘅時候，其實你本身嘅 purpose 係啲乜嘢咧？你本身想 achieve 嘅目標係啲乜嘢咧？你自己一開始報嗰個 course 嘅時候，嗰個心仲喺唔喺呢一度咧？其實只要我哋從住呢兩方面去諗，再配合翻我頭先講，其實現存呢個 society 入面有好多唔同嘅 tool 去幫我哋解決呢一啲問題嘅時候，其實正就可以回應翻我哋今日問題嗰個，正就可以回應翻我哋今日條問題，點樣去提升翻我哋線上學習嘅體驗，就係用我哋嘅心、我哋嘅諗法，用我哋思考多啲去褪一步去為唔同即係睇緊你嘅片學習嘅人去諗，配合翻呢啲 tool 去做一個 solution 出嚟，其實就係解決咗我哋今日嗰個問題咯。咁所以我大約今日講嘅分享就係咁多啦。咁睇下大家會唔會有問題想問一問或者傾一傾咁咯，係啦。
Thank you so much, Woody。咁我哋可以而家去睇下有冇其他人有冇問題啦。咁都可以喺我哋 Q&A 嗰度或者 chat box 嗰度都可以嘅。
Stop sharing screen。
好。咁如果都冇啦，如果你或者你係有其他問題係 for Renee 或者 Ruby 咧，你都可以隨時喺呢度打出嚟嘅。So 轉翻台先就 ，thank you all for joining。Industry, and that together we can take hold of this time to reimagine and redesign education for our next generation.
多謝今日大家咧抽空出席 CoCoon Smart Talk 教育再想像，咁而我哋咧就好想再一次咁樣多謝我哋唔同嘅講者啦，同我哋分享咗好多新嘅教育喺教育裡面嘅趨勢啦，同埋啲資源俾我哋了解到更加多關於未來教育嘅發展嘅。
If you'd like to know more about CoCoon events, please again PM us your email and we can add you into our mailing list. Thank you again for joining in today.
咁如果你想參加更加多未來嘅一啲活動啦，歡迎你可以私信你嘅電郵地址俾我哋，咁等我哋咧可以將你加入翻每月通訊裡面，等你咧都可以接收到其他相關嘅資源啦，同埋啲活動嘅詳情嘅。咁再一次多謝大家嘅參與，拜拜。